Shisha.
Whoa, coming in hot.
Dude, Shisha? That's that King of the Hill reference. Dale Gribble. The perfect conspiracy theorist, probably the best character outside of Cotton Hill on that show.
Rusty Shackelford?
Yes, dude. His alias, the great Rusty Shackelford. One of my favorite episodes is where we find out in the show that Rusty Shackelford is actually a real person, and he stole his identity in like second grade.
I formerly had a coworker of mine at the old mystery tackle box, and whenever he would use an alias online to like do some data research or something like that, he would use Justin Timbershake.
Should that be my name? Justin Timbershake. I like that.
Sure could. Try it out, man. See how it fits you.
I don't want to. Yeah, well, whatever. All right, welcome to the podcast, everybody. We were recording, right?
We're recording. I pressed my button.
I pressed my button too. Buttons have been pressed. There will be more buttons pressed, I'm sure, as we start today's topic. Dogmen, werewolves, and the beast of motherfucking Bray Road.
Beast of Bray Road.
I know your favorite topics.
Bastard.
I think your favorite topics are the ones we do that are about complete dog shit stuff like this.
I mean, well, for sure my favorite topics are the ones that we record like 4 times.
It's definitely the 8th recording. I don't know. I'm excited, dude. I hope the next week's one is fun. I've been doing a lot of Doc Ellis homework, and I think it's going to be a different kind of animal in itself, no pun intended. I was really blown away. I thought he was going to be a little bit more shallow at base. I thought it was pretty much just about this no-hitter that he threw while blazed out of his mind on LSD, but it sounded like it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, dude. Well, I think it's like, there's some fun parts, but I think that he was an important figure in sports. I didn't realize that. I had always just known that there was this pitcher that in the 70s on the Pirates, there was a rumor that he threw no hitter in 1972. That's not a rumor, but there was a rumor that he was on acid. And looking into it, maybe a little bit arguable that he was on acid that day. But we will definitely discuss it. I think he was definitely high. I think he definitely did a lot of acid the day before. And I don't know if I know what that would feel like.
Yeah, I've never done anything illegal once in my life. So,
but I would venture to guess that maybe you're not back right where you started by the time he took the mound. But he's an interesting guy. He's a I didn't realize he was a black guy, and that was a big part of who he was, and especially at a time when, this is 2 decades, after Jackie Robinson, but obviously still a very tumultuous time in professional sports. The Pittsburgh Pirates at that time,
tumultuous time in American history, I would argue as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just coming out of the back end of the civil rights movement,
the death of the hippie movement in 1967. The free love and acid in the air, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, Woodstock was in 1969, so I wouldn't. Maybe it was a slow death.
By that time, we could talk about it then. We're gonna get back on topic. God damn it, let's talk about it. We're talking about the Beast of Bray Road today. Wisconsin's. We're talking about Wisconsin's most prolific cryptid. The Beast of Bray Road. I think originally we had Bark at the Moonlight up by Ozzy Osbourne, but I think we've talked about how we don't want to get sued yet. So we're too
and also like that was just like that was too on the nose.
Yeah, a little kitschy. I think that other one, the Warren Zevon song, would have been a little bit on the nose. You know, Werewolves of London. Yeah, that song sucks.
I don't like the name Warren Zevon. It makes me uncomfortable, and I don't know why.
I think Warren is a crazy name.
I'm more against the Zevon part. Like, what are you?
Zevon? That sounds like an alien race that has yet to be discovered.
Hey, man, maybe we'll discuss it on the Decrypted podcast one week.
Yeah, that's like our keynote here. One day we'll discuss it on the podcast.
Yeah, all 6 listeners are going to be like, these guys are full of shit.
Everybody who listens is like, dude, this is like the 3rd time I've tried to listen to this shit, and it's terrible.
Dude, I mean, how many times do 2 fucking guys get together and say they're going to start a podcast, and then it sucks? But ours is going to be different.
Ours is going to be different. I mean, audio quality alone, we're ahead of the curve here, for sure.
Well, we sure have tried hard enough.
All right. I think, how you doing? Let's start with this. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Did you go fishing this weekend? Talk for 2 minutes.
Yes.
I gotta get up. Not even for 2 minutes. Talk for 30 seconds, and tell us how you're doing.
Okay. Well, I'm doing good. Yeah, I did go fishing this weekend. I went salmon fishing this weekend. Fishing was kind of slow. We caught some fish. They were small. That's all everyone needs to know. I am a little. There's one thing that really gets on my nerves, and you know what? I discussed this with Justin.
A grinds my gears moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, grinds my gears. I guess. Yeah, it pisses me off. We're gonna have to come up with whatever we're calling the section where Seth is pissed off about something, because obviously grind my gears is just a blatant pull from Family Guy. But another train thing, this one much worse than the first one. Originally, I talked about how I don't like how people are loud when they're not in the quiet car just because it's not the quiet car. That does piss me off. That sucks. But what really pisses me off is when I get on the train in the evening at like 5:30 p.m. when I get off of work and I walk down the train cars and the train is crowded, right? There's no empty seats on the train. But then you have these jackasses that are sitting next to the window, and then they put a bag on the other seat on the bench. So it's just like people are just supposed to walk by and look for an empty seat because you didn't want to share your bench with someone. You can fuck off. Dude, that pisses me off so bad. And I make a point. I make a point. Dude, if there's an empty seat directly behind someone that has their backpack on the bench, I say, pardon me. You want to move in your backpack because I'm sitting here?
I'm with you. I am very confrontational. That would just become a game for me. You know, like,
Oh, yeah.
all right, bud. You're the one. I don't give a shit if there's 5 open seats right next to you. I'm sitting right next to you. And you know what? We're gonna touch leg hair. I'm gonna put my knee.
Yeah.
It's gonna kind of rub up against yours for most of the ride here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, metro seats aren't built for someone who's 6'4", 255 pounds. But that's what I am.
I can't imagine much of the
And,
world is built for animals like you.
Well, yeah, tell me about it. But I mean, I keep to myself, but I'm not like, I'm definitely taking up more room than you are.
Definitely.
So
you're in the Midwest, though. I think you got it. You got a chance that they're not, though.
If you want to ensure that someone is sitting next to you that doesn't respect you, just go ahead and put your backpack next to you, buddy.
What a dick. All right, we're gonna get back on topic for the third time today, and we're gonna discuss the Beasts of Bray Road here. We're gonna try to keep this. There's no end to this story, and I think that's what was difficult about trying to record it the first few times. The story just kind of is, and I think it's still one of my favorites because I am from Wisconsin, or I live in Wisconsin currently. Rather, I did live in Illinois for quite a big period of my life, but I was born here. I've spent now most of my adult life in this state, and it's comforting to me. So kind of our part 2 of Wisconsin, the weird is the goofy shit that kind of happens in the state that I live in, and we can kind of discuss that. So the Hodag was part 1. We had a great episode. I think we talked about that, and we're gonna try to make this a great episode too. So we're just gonna force this down your throats. I'm gonna culminate all the kind of things we're gonna talk about, and then we're gonna bring it to an abrupt end. I'm just gonna hit stop recording. So that's how this is gonna go. That's the ending we're looking for. Right.
We all got things to do.
We got shit. It's Monday. God damn it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to start. We can talk about belief or not belief, and I am on the, I guess, the belief train. It took me a long time to kind of get into Dogman reportings. I think when you discuss any kind of cryptid, when we talk about Bigfoot or Sasquatch, for me, I do believe in that. There's no question. I feel like there has been enough definitive proof for me, rather, to kind of say, okay, I think this thing is out there. I've never seen it. We've discussed our creature weird sightings, and I've never seen it, obviously. But like I said, in the court of law, this thing exists, and for me right now, that's good enough. Science has a way to go, and I think the community kind of needs to get their shit together and quit arguing with each other so that we can get this kind of put forward. But I think that the Dogman thing was very tough for me because I literally was like, Dogman, werewolf? What the hell? Like, I don't want to. I'm already out there on a limb with this Sasquatch thing,
Yeah, well, I mean, you just said in the court of law this thing exists. I don't really know what that means. So obviously I'm on the other side a little bit. I definitely want Bigfoot to exist. I definitely don't. I mean, if I was a betting man, if I had to bet, does Bigfoot exist? Not has Bigfoot ever existed, but does Bigfoot exist right now? And by Bigfoot, just, a big hairy thing that's not an ape that walks around.
A bipedal hominid, right?
Yeah. So Bigfoot is just the name we're giving it. That's what everyone knows it as.
Could you just call it a Sasquatch for me?
The Sasquatch.
Sam Squamch.
Yeah, Sam Squamch. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want it to exist. That would be awesome. I don't understand why anyone would not want Bigfoot to exist. That would be so cool. I don't think that right now, as we're recording this podcast, somewhere out in the woods, that one of them does exist. I think that if they have existed, they're probably extinct, which is unfortunate, but whatever. If actual proof ever comes out, I'm going to be ecstatic. I'll be just as excited as Justin. I can honestly say I'll be just as excited as Justin. He's going to be saying things like, I knew it. And I'm going to be saying things like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did. And I did. And I will say that. I have a list of people whose face I'm going to rub it in the most. You're not really in the top 5, so you don't have to worry about it. But
why would I be in the top 5?
You're a better source of comfort to talk about these. I would have never approached you or broached the topic of podcasting about anything outrageous or weird had I didn't think you were going to have somewhat of an open mind on it. You know, we kind of we've talked about that before. So when we tie this back into Dogmen, and I really was like, ugh, I wanted to put like a stop on my belief. I wanted to put like a, all right, here's the line I'm not willing to cross. And I think I kind of, over the last year, and I'd say I've been doing pretty solid, armchair warrior research on this for about, and I have been in the woods. Like I've definitely been in the quote unquote field. I've gone out and, looked or whatever, but nothing as serious as any like one researcher would look for. But I said, I wanted to put a stop at Sasquatch and wild things. But when I got to a point about a year ago, I was like, you know what? I'm in. Like, let's just believe in it. Why the hell not? So we talk about Dogman. I'm not talking about a werewolf. I'm not talking about a person shape-shifting into a creature of mythical ethos. I'm talking about some kind of evolutionary deformity, maybe in a wolf or coyote. And I kind of think I think that's more what these people are seeing. And then we'll kind of go into discussion later about where this kind of derails for me as well as for you. I think when we talk about Dogmen, you can kind of even understand that maybe there is a deformity out there and people are seeing a rather large dog or coyote or wolf, and maybe at one point it was up on its hind legs bouncing around or doing whatever. But I think, like I said, we'll get into this later, but once we start talking about demonic possessions and this thing being evil, and I just roll my eyes every time I hear about that stuff, because like I said, I have basis in reality here.
We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's tell the people what we're even talking about.
All right, Dogman, Beast of Bray Road. Let's do it. So it's, Wisconsin's not unique to Dogman stories. Michigan's had their own. There's been, there's been tales all over the globe is the beginning of time. But the Beast of Bray Road is kind of its own little unique thing. So it kind of takes place in a city called Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And Elkhorn is about an hour 40-minute drive from the city of Milwaukee. It pretty much sits dead center in the state, but way at the southern end. So it's still considered southeastern Wisconsin. It's about 30 minutes from the border. If you've ever heard of Delavan Lake or Lake Geneva, very popular vacation destinations around here for the area. And I mean, it's just outside. So Elkhorn is not a middle of nowhere kind of city. It does kind of seem that way. And I think if you kind of drove through it, or if you're from where the streets have numbers, I think you can kind of get that intention, or you get that thought,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, so we're going to kind of pull from some funner sources. We watched, and we talked about this. We watched a documentary called The Bray Road Beast. It's on Amazon. I encourage you to check it out. It's fun to watch, and it does kind of, again, go off the rails. But I also read a really great book by author Linda Godfrey called The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf. And again, a little bit more, I think, kind of a tongue-in-cheek, what do you want to call it? Book title? Yeah, book title. So I am reading your message. Just slow down. I got that. I was getting really excited. Yeah, I got to slow down though. So anyway, I do find it just, I find Linda Godfrey to be kind of more of a level-headed approacher to this. She has been in the field for a long time. I mean, this is kind of where she started her career in this. Like, I mean, somebody basically was just like, hey, go out and investigate this. Like, go see what this is all about. And I mean, this story just kind of blows up out of nowhere. So we're talking.
She was like a small town reporter, right?
Yeah, and an illustrator for a newspaper, correct? Yeah. So she didn't really have an
illustrator. She drew pictures.
She's the one that originally drew the picture, but yeah, she was also the illustrator for the newspaper, and it's a small time newspaper out of Walworth County, which is where Elkhorn is. And like I said, she was a reporter, is still a reporter, and that's kind of where it started. Like I said, this started back in, like, I want to say 88 or 89, and they just somebody's just like, hey, can you just go out and see what these people are talking about? Somebody called in and said that they're seeing these weird things. And it kind of goes back to a story that kind of started in the early 30s, which is kind of like where the first sighting kind of happened. And this is kind of one of the more fun things I think about the story. So this guy, his name is Mark Shackleman. His dad was a groundskeeper / security guard for this place called St. Coletta's. And St. Coletta's was it was like a facility or a hospital for, I want to say, mentally handicapped, mentally challenged people that weren't able to take care of themselves. And one night he's outside walking around the grounds, and he comes around the corner, and there is a graveyard here. You know, as I guess with most hospitals at the time probably had their own graveyard, which is very bizarre to me. But
bring out your dead.
That's right. I'm not dead yet. But yeah, they had like a lot of, it's just weird, you know. But again, this is the 1930s, and I'm sure the graveyard had been there for quite a while.
I mean, it's Wisconsin. I can't tell you how many buildings I've driven by that look like they're 150 years old that just have tombstones surrounding them.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that a lot of these things aren't meant to be graveyards, but then eventually turn into them.
I mean, where else do you put your dead people?
It's cold up here. You know what? We can go on about how I think cemeteries are the biggest waste of space next to golf courses in the entire country, but we're not if you want to you want to talk about how this show is not supposed to be a debate. If you want to debate, you can start talking about how golf courses are waste of space. So we'll talk about it. We'll talk about next week my absolute disposition for baseball, and we'll go over that. That's for next week. We'll talk sports next week. But anyway,
disposition.
I hate it. I hate baseball. I'm glad I don't watch it anymore. Listen, back to the story. So Shackleman comes around the corner and he sees what he can only describe as like a dog or large wolf sitting in a kneeling position on this grave. And it seems to kind of be digging at something, like furiously digging. And he is just like, what the shit? So he points his flashlight at this thing. It kind of looks at him and doesn't do the typical like, oh shit, deer in headlights, and then dips out of there. It kind of stands there and looks at him for a second, and he doesn't know what to think of it. It appears that this thing is just staring at him, and it walks away, and he is terrified at this point. This thing stands up. He said it's about 7 feet tall, and I can't imagine. Let's put you in the position, believe it or not, Seth. You're walking around. It's nighttime, right? And you come around the corner, and a beast dog thing stands up on 2 legs. It's over 7 feet tall. I mean, that's another 8 inches over you. What are you looking at?
What am I looking at? I'm looking at the thing that's going to make me go the other fucking direction.
Exactly. He gets the hell out of there, and like any one of us would. He turns around. He goes back inside. He's done with this shit. You know? So he comes back out the next day thinking, all right, there's no way this thing's back, but he got to do his rounds. He goes back out there, and sure as shit, this thing is standing out there again. And this time, this thing starts really staring him down. Gets up and apparently kind of...
It's so silly, though.
It can certainly come off as silly, that's for sure.
But it is, though. It just is silly. The first night, this big, giant, hairy werewolf beast that's like chewing on a gravesite, he sees the flashlight or whatever. What year is this? What year is this?
This is like 1939, I want to say.
Oh, so it might actually be a flashlight, not a lantern. It's probably a lantern.
It's
right?
not a lantern. They had flashlights in the 30s, for God's sake.
When did Maglite get invented? And so just stares at him, probably thinking about what part of him he wants to bite off first. And then the guy walks around the corner and it's gone. He comes out the next day and it's just there again, and then stares at him harder.
Yeah. So now it's like I think kind of this creature's like, all right, man, now you're fucking with my shit here. Okay? I'm standing on the same grave I was digging at the other day, and you got the flashlight in my eyes. This thing apparently gurgles to him in some kind of proto-human, or he describes it as a neo-human voice, makes direct eye contact with him. Again, gurgles something that sounds like the word Gadara. We're not going to really go into that. This is where it kind of, like I said, left turns. And it just kind of turns and walks away, and this guy never sees this thing again. Finishes out his career at this place.
I just imagine this werewolf creature. You know, he's just thinking, you know, man, like I'm minding my own business, dude. I found a pretty fresh corpse. I was just eating that shit because, you know, I mean, it's Wisconsin. There's not a lot of food everywhere. I can only eat so many chickens. This guy comes out here and starts fucking with me. So I stared him down like you do, and I was like, yo, Gojira.
Do you think he gives him a flex check you know, like puts the
Yeah,
shoulders up and kind of got my.
I'm sure this werewolf. I'm sure this werewolf is lean muscle.
Yeah,
I'm
dude,
sure
you got this. These things are described as pure muscle. You know, they talk about a shredded looking fucking canine here, like if a pit bull and why am I having a German Shepherd? I could not think of a German Shepherd. Have just been in the gym their whole lives hitting the roids. You know what I mean? Like Ken Shamrock circa 1999. Just like an 8-pack.
Muscles on top of muscles.
An unnatural looking, you know, beyond the idea that it's a cryptid, you know, an unnatural looking amount of muscles. But yeah, these things,
when you're playing a video game and you're in the create a character screen and you put fat level 0, muscle level 100, and you just see these veins coursing through a body in a very unnatural way. It looks like the creature is like 7 feet, but they only got like a 6 foot tall basket of skin that they've wrapped around it. So it's wrapped really tightly.
So these things are, you know, described as upright walking canine looking figures. They're dark brown, blackish hair, and this guy described this thing as black hair. I said standing between 7 and 8 feet tall, about 400 to 700 pounds, which is a huge variance, by the way. 300 pounds is a massive variance in size. I always like these size variances, and you'll see this in Sasquatches too. Like, it had to be 700 to 1,000 pounds, and I'm like, okay, there's a huge variance in 300 pounds. I weigh 240. I'm a big guy. Like, you could take me out of there and still leave room for error. And now you're describing it as this thing at 700 or this thing at 1,000 pounds. So,
do you know what it is though, man? It's that people don't know how to judge sizes of things.
And I think certainly the layman. You're right. I think that's true.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason that I feel like I know how to do it is because I've been fishing my entire life. When you hold a fish, you're just like, oh yeah, it's a 6-pounder. You know.
I think hunters are more adept to that.
Yeah. Absolutely, hunters. Yeah, for sure. But like a normal person, they don't need to look at anything and guess how much it weighs. Yeah. At least not to the point where there's any criticism if they're wrong. Like in fishing, if you catch a 20-pound king salmon and you post a picture and say I caught a 25-pound king salmon, post it on Facebook or something like that, everyone's gonna call you out. All your friends are gonna call you out and be like, dude, you're that guy that exaggerates the size of everything you catch. And everyone hates that.
Like,
guy.
I feel, but that's like a fishing norm. You guys are all out there like, I caught a whale, and it's some little sunfish. It is amongst
a certain sect of douchebags of fishing.
They all exist. So it doesn't.
Unlike the Beast of Bray Road.
Somebody hit the hi-hat. He's got jokes.
But
so this story doesn't just stop at Shackleman here. This thing now there's not a lot of sightings or reported sightings between the 30s and 1989, which is when we're going to kind of pick this story back up here, where this woman named Lori Andreezy, who is driving home from work one night, and she is a bar manager at a bar outside of town, and she's taking Bray Road. Now, Bray Road, not like the most country of country roads here. Now, certainly, a country road, a county byway, right? But this road is 4 miles long. So to see the amount of sightings within this 4 mile period, I think that's where some of the truth comes in for me. Now, again, we talk about, is it a werewolf? Is it this dog man? Or is it this mutation, this genetic anomaly within dog or coyote? And I think that's, like I said,
is it nothing? And are most of the people that have claimed to see it just full of shit? And then they say that they saw it on Bray Road because they know Bray Road is going to add a level of respect to their story.
I think it certainly holds true. When one story comes out or two stories come out, and it's like, I saw this thing on Bray Road. Now you got a bunch of people saying, I also saw this thing on Bray Road. But again, I try to take people at their word, and a lot of the people who did the investigations are real and legitimate people that don't sound. I'm talking about the people doing the investigations now. You talk about Linda Godfrey, and we're going to talk about the what is this guy's name? The John Fredrickson, which is the Walworth County Animal Control Officer. These people seem like normal people investigating this situation. And
That was the guy that was in the film.
John Fredrickson is in the film, yeah, and he's the one with the. We'll get into this with the werewolf folder, but
we will get into it. I mean, should I explain? Okay, well, just tell me when I can talk about him.
You can introduce him right now. Actually, let me finish what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's credibility in the investigators, and maybe not the people telling the story, but the credibility in the investigators come from, okay, I'm looking at this with kind of an open mind, but at the same time, what am I looking at, and who am I talking to about this? And I think that when you talk to these people, and they're like, I don't know what they saw. And he says this too. He's like, I don't know what they saw. I don't think it's a werewolf. I don't think it's a dog man. He's like, but they're seeing something out there outside of the norm. And these people are farmers. We talk about John Bray himself, one of the people who lived on the farm. Bray wrote his name after a family of farmers, or 5 or 6 members of a family that all bought this land coming out of the late 1800s, and they decided to settle there. And I mean, the road is then later named after them. People have moved, but there's still a few of the Bray family that sit on this piece of property. And right. I mean, these people know what a wolf looks like, and they know what a coyote looks like. Again, lending more credence to the idea that maybe not a dogman, maybe not a werewolf, but some kind of anomaly creature that says, Jesus, this thing is, I mean, we were going to go into the John Bray story in a little bit here, but again, I think the people investigating are credible people, and I would like to stress that. But go ahead and tell me your story of John, Mr. Fredrickson.
Well, I mean, so we watched this film called The Bray Road Beast. It's a documentary that's on Amazon Prime, so if you're interested in watching it at all, go give it a watch. And John Fredrickson was introduced early on in the movie as I shouldn't say as himself, right? He was an animal control person. He had been doing it for 30 years, blah, blah, blah. He seemed very normal. He seemed relatively trustworthy until at some point in the movie. So eventually here, I think right after this, Justin's going to tell you about a first interesting sighting scenario that this woman had, that this Linda Godfrey woman went and spoke to her. So Justin will get into that. But in the documentary, he says, this John Fredrickson guy says that he speaks to her, and she actually ended up coming to his facilities there and was explaining what she saw and what she had seen. And then he just says, and right in the middle of our conversation, my books that were on a bookshelf just started flying off the bookshelf. And then they were just like, all right. And then they cut away from him. He was not in the film any more than that. They didn't touch on it any more than that. So it went from
let me recant what you're saying. So they did touch on it a little bit. He talks about how that was kind of the end of their conversation. He said it was a very weird moment for them. And then after Linda Godfrey speaks with him about it, she's kind of also like, yeah, they said that this happened and it was very strange, and nothing was there to cause. There's no earthquakes. There's no weirdness. It just happens. And he even also says that, I think something along the lines of I have no idea what the hell that was. I think it's a really weird and moot point to be in the movie, and I don't think it makes him any less credible.
What it is, it's just bullshit, man.
You call honestly, it bullshit, though.
Well, dude, it is, man. Like we can talk about people seeing these creatures that they could be creatures that potentially someone has not discovered yet or are very rare. Yes, I suppose that is an extreme possibility. They also could be regular animals with certain types of mutations. Yes, that is a less extreme possibility. But to sit there and say that you were having a conversation with someone who saw it and then books started randomly flying off the shelf, then you're not talking about anything that is even really worthy of a rational discussion between adults. You're just talking about bullshit, saying books flew off your shelf. Dude, that didn't happen. Okay. Because that doesn't happen.
I think it's pretty tall for you to say something that doesn't happen. There's all kinds of reasons or ways that could possibly happen. And first of all, Ghostbusters, 1986. In the basement of the library, books were flying off the shelves. Okay,
I hate to break it to you.
Don't you dare! Don't you dare! It was a documentary. It was a documentary.
Dude.
I've never seen it happen. I'm just saying it's not out of the line of possibilities.
Okay, I guess also it's not out of the line of possibilities that right now my computer just flies up into my ceiling.
That is true. Weirder things have happened that are true things. Weirder things have happened. We're going to move on because this is just going to cause an argument. And I agree with you. It seems, in my opinion, kind of a moot point to the story. It doesn't and there's a mention in the book that Linda Godfrey writes about this too. I don't think it adds anything to the story. And when we talked about it at the beginning of the episode, at the head of the episode, where I like to believe that these things exist in the flesh and blood sense and the non bizarre paranormal, like no human mutates into this animal thing. Like I said, I think that doesn't do itself any favors when you kind of start adding stuff like that to the story.
Yes, I would agree that it obviously doesn't know favors, and I would just go one step further and say that, in my opinion, it completely invalidates him as a reliable source of information whatsoever, full stop. That's my take on it.
It wasn't a full stop if you have more things to say after that. But we're going to move on. So now Lori Andreezy comes to him and says, listen, I'm driving down the road. I'm driving down Bray Road. It's late at night. I'm seeing this thing in the ditch. Now there's a ditch, like any ditch on the side of the road, probably 3 or 4 feet down to the right. And as she's pulling up on this thing, she just notices the big shoulders, and it's kind of like this hulking figure. Well, actually, I think she describes it as more of a slim, or it was appearing like remarkably human, as she states it. But she can see the shoulders on this thing. And she sees and notices that it's kind of kneeling down. It's not sitting. So again, you have the second story of kneeling down. Now, did Lori Andreezy read this story about this guy in the 1930s? I would say probably not. But it is important to note that she is also talking about this thing. This thing's kneeling down. As she comes to this thing, she starts slowing down. She doesn't know what the hell this thing is. She slows down, turns to her right, and looks at this thing. And this thing is holding a piece of dead roadkill in its hands and is seemingly eating this thing. And as she's looking at this, as she sees what this thing is, and she obviously is probably, and rightfully so, probably terrified, right? She speeds past this and keeps going. And as the days go on and she's kind of recalling her story, she kind of makes sure to note that this thing is holding on to something. It's not like it's not holding it in paws. It's holding it in what she considered claws. She's like, I can see this thing holding whatever this thing is. It's clutching this thing, And I think that was a kind of a really neat point, or a really neat like fact to her story. Is like, I saw hands on this thing. It was holding whatever this thing was, and like I said, it at the time she's saying it's about 150 pounds and weighing, or coming in around 5'7", and that's just kind of kneeling down in the ditch here.
Sorry. Are you? I feel like you're leaving out a huge part of this.
Go ahead.
I mean, isn't this the woman that stopped, got out of her car?
No. That's Doris Gibson. That's the next story.
Okay.
So no. We'll get to Doris Gibson here in just a second. So that's kind of the first modern day, if that's what you want to call it, sighting of this. And she actually doesn't come out and say anything about this right away. I mean, she tells her mom. Her mom's kind of like, what the fuck, And I think it kind of goes by the wayside. And then a few years later, this woman, Doris Gibson, sees this thing on Halloween. It's 1991. She's driving down Bray Road as well. And she feels like she runs something over. She says she feels a small bump, and she's just like, what the hell was that? So she kind of goes for a minute and then gets out of her car, gets out of her car and turns around. And she sees this thing standing there. Now, again, we're talking about the Beast of Bray Road. Every time I mention this thing, she sees this creature, the Beast of Bray Road, apparently standing in front of her. And this thing is now at this point very large, about 20 yards from her car. And she cannot believe what she's looking at. This is when the story gets a little shady for me, as well as you. I'm positive if it hasn't already. She decides that she says that this thing basically charges at her car. Like, I don't know, maybe she's mad. I'd be mad if I got ran over too. So this thing charges at her car. She's able to get into the car. This thing jumps on their hood, T2 style. What's the character
on her
from?
trunk?
Yeah,
on her trunk.
It jumps on the car, and I don't think
T1000 or something.
The T1000, yeah. So it grabs the car with its claws. Again, she said she distinctly remembers seeing claws, and it leaves what she describes as these scratch marks. Now, again, Linda Godfrey, sent out to kind of explain the situation and kind of look into this a little bit more, notes that she does see scratches on the vehicle.
Hold on. Sorry, Justin.
Hold on. No.
Okay.
She sees the scratches on the vehicle and is basically confirms this. Now, this is the part where I'm going to agree with you. So I want you to share your piece with this. But that's pretty much the long and short of this thing.
Right. But yeah. Okay. So, but what happened is this woman got home and then got in touch with the local paper, and Linda Godfrey was sent to her house to look at it. Okay. And she then said that she saw what this woman said. She looked at this woman's car and she saw what she said looked like claw marks on her trunk. Okay, so that's the situation. Just to let people know what actually happened. Like Linda Godfrey wasn't her next door neighbor. She was called out to investigate. She was an illustrator for an illustrator and a reporter for a small town paper.
She was a reporter first.
Okay, and she goes to investigate a basically an attack on a woman's vehicle from an animal that doesn't exist, and she doesn't take a picture at all. So doesn't take a picture, doesn't really write up any detailed report of what she saw.
That's for sure.
Linda Godfrey is still alive. So I mean, you right now, you Justin, as someone who has a podcast that we've recorded 2 episodes of that 4 people on the planet know about, I'm sure you could email Linda Godfrey and get her to respond. This woman isn't famous, and
She's
ask her why the hell.
She's pretty famous in this world. I just want to let you know. She is definitely fairly famous in the cryptid community. She's written several books at this point. I'm not saying she wouldn't email me back, but let's not go so far as to say she's not famous.
She's not famous. She might, I mean, let's not throw out the word famous, dude. Yeah, she might have a little bit of a following. But I'm sure you could email her and say, hey, Linda, I was wondering why you didn't get a picture. And I would love to hear what she says. Yeah. I would love to hear what she says.
I think in the unlikely event that she ever comes across this, maybe she'll have something to say about it.
Because like sometimes I'll go and I'll buy something and I'll be like, man, I don't really like this. And then I'll go back and I'll try to return it. And they'll be like, where's your receipt? And I'll be like, man, I really should have kept my receipt, because then when I came back and told you that I got this here, you would take it back because you'd believe me, because I'd have proof that I saw something.
I'm not sure where the receipt story is tying in here. That's kind of a...
Basically, her picture of the claw marks is her receipt. Why the hell didn't she take a picture?
I don't know, man. I told you. I agree with you. Where's the picture? Where's the proof is in the pudding, right? I feel like I agree. I agree. You have somebody telling you that this happened. You go out to investigate. You are a reporter, small town or not, still 1991 here. You have a camera. There's a disposable camera at the Walgreens. You could do something. A Polaroid even could have sufficed. So, yes, I agree.
In 1991, there were mountains of disposable cameras. You walk to your mailbox, you trip over disposable cameras.
I don't know if it's quite that ludicrous. That's when they were like $24 a piece. So film was tough to come by.
That's when Kodak was still around.
Isn't Kodak still around?
I don't know.
I think Kodak is probably owned by some other larger company now.
Yeah, like I'm sure. Yeah. But I think Kodak might have gone out of business.
So let's actually hear what Lori Andreezy says about this. Now, this is on an episode of Inside Edition. I'm not really sure how long this is. I'm going to try to stop it at the right time. But this is just kind of a brief description of what she has to say. I listened to it about a week ago, so hopefully this is still relevant to the way we're shooting this episode. So that's the first episode, or that first video?
The first video. Okay, so we're gonna watch a video here. Yep. Okay.
I'm going to start it on go. So 3, 2, 1, go.
I saw it kneeling on the side of the road, and it was eating something. And I came up from behind it, and I slowed down because I thought it was a person at first. So I came up from behind it, and I realized it wasn't a person when I saw its pointy ears.
From those descriptions, Linda drew up this composite picture of the beast. All agreed it was very big, with pointy...
All right, so... I thought there was a little bit more to that, and unfortunately, it's also very quiet on the recording. So I don't know. Either we keep it in or we don't. But I think the point that we're making here is that she feels pretty certain about what she sees. She does describe this thing again as having these claws and kneeling down in the ditch. She doesn't obviously do it here. So I guess we can just scrap the entire first video on this. This is not as good as I thought this was going to be. There's another interview that I had sworn that I must have picked the wrong video. So either way, we're going to move on briskly from this one.
Okay. So,
but do you want to listen to the next one or no?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, you like this next one. This next one's fun for you to listen. So we're going to listen to another one.
Brought to you by Sean Hannity
of Fox News. So again, not maybe the most reliable source of information, but this guy's story is good. Now, it's important to remember too that this story isn't on Bray Road. This is about 45 minutes to an hour north of it. Again, lending more credence to the idea that these things are now seen in not just on Bray Road, but definitely in the southeastern Wisconsin area. So I'm gonna hit play on go again. So we're gonna do 3, 2, 1, go.
It was November of 2006. It was approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. I was contracted by the DNR at the time to pick up the roadkill deer alongside the road. It was on Holy Hill Road. I pulled right on over, and I got lifted up the deer, threw it in the back of the truck. I went back into the cab. I had my beacon light on. There were no other cars in sight. I sat down and started to do the paperwork, and I felt the truck shake. At first I thought it was the wind until it shook a second time and it was a little bit more vigorous. When I looked in the rearview mirror, what I saw was a larger black hairy creature. Looked like it was actually reaching into the back end of the truck. It looked like it was a body of a bear, but the head was a larger looking type of wolf head with a large muzzle on it, a longer muzzle, and it had pointy ears. At first, it didn't quite hit me right off the bat what it was that I was seeing. It startled me, but the minute I got a clearer look at it after a couple seconds, all I knew is that it was not something I've ever seen before. And I've seen pretty much, I thought, every type of animal that there was inside of the state of Wisconsin until that night.
All right, so I think that's a much better account or recounting of
yes,
seeing something.
I would say that's a much better account of someone who saw something very weird
and certainly
now
unexplainable.
What's funny just about the show is, first of all, I think it's hilarious that it's Sean Hannity. If anyone happening to listen to this knows who Sean Hannity is, I mean, obviously, I mean, anyone should know who Sean Hannity is. He's a longtime host of a far right-wing show on Fox News, and it's not even that his politics are right-wing. That's that's whatever.
That's pretty par for the course, I'd say for the
but I mean, Sean Hannity, I'm sure Sean Hannity is just in the litigiousness of his vigor for conservatism, and I know that he's deeply religious too. I'm just surprised that he would even have this on any one of his shows. It just surprised me. It just surprises me.
I think that's a great.
Also,
go ahead.
The little header under that man as he was telling his story, it says claims to have seen a man wolf.
Didn't notice that.
That's what it said.
I think what I like about this guy's story too. Again, more background. You can talk about the guy we were talking about earlier. God damn it. His names are really escaping me at this point. But the worker for the county here,
Jack, whatever.
Thank you. More people who probably know what they're looking at, and I think that again, this kind of gives a little bit more. It gives a little bit more evidence that this thing, something is out there that isn't of the normal run-of-the-mill wolf coyote species.
Okay, so I'm going to read a fact for people here. Okay, Wisconsin.
Wait, where do you get this fact?
The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Gotcha. Go.
Okay. Wisconsin is home to a thriving black bear population, estimated at more than 28,000 bears. The black bear's primary range is located in the far northern third of the state. Due to a growing population, bears are becoming much more common in the lower 2/3 of the state than ever before.
Yes, but not in 1991, by the way. And the wolf population is also not that vigorous at this point either. So this is 30 years ago.
Sure.
So
yes.
Again, I will agree with you. There is plenty, and we'll talk about. This was kind of another point we could talk about it right now. Things that this thing could be, because basically at the end of the day here, or at the end of this, where this is pretty much all there is to the Beasts of Bray Road. You have these people in Elkhorn on Bray Road are seeing something. We haven't figured it out what it is. They have no idea what it is. County officials don't know what it is. Police are trying to figure it out. Nobody's come across this thing. And again, we can talk all day about witness stories and bring up people, and we talked about it earlier. This story doesn't really have an ending to it, but the wrap up we're going to give to it is kind of what this thing could be and what this thing probably is, right? Again, we're going to lead for me too. We can talk about how I hate when the community does this, and this community does this a lot, and the cryptid community does this a lot, and they start kind of doing this weird thing where they start talking about it being supernatural in the idea of like God or the devil. So it's like, I think this is some sort of possessed demon dog. You know, it had glowing red eyes, and I could feel when it was looking at me that there was this sense of evil about it. There was something demonic about the way I absolutely, and I know you agree with this too. I absolutely, if you are going to give any kind of valid reasoning for seeing something out there, I think the second I stop listening to you is when you start saying stuff like that, because it just is. Come on.
Yeah,
Come
it's
on.
because you saw something that you don't understand doesn't mean you then have the authority to make claims about the nature of its of it being there.
I think that's
no one is
verbatim.
qualified.
That's the most. Yes, exactly. You by your own admission have no idea what the hell this thing is. Why then all of a sudden are you going to start like aligning it with other things that are also belief only systems? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're some kind of expert on whether or not it's good or evil. It's bullshit. It's totally bullshit. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about what this is, because I mean, as you said, there isn't any more to this. I mean, there is something that, like, this is something that people claim to have seen over a period of time in a slightly higher click than other areas, and people may have claimed to have seen the same thing.
Right.
I'll just say what I think it is. There's a lot of black bears in Wisconsin. Sometimes black bears become diseased or ill, just like any animal. When an animal is diseased or ill, sometimes they act odd or more aggressive. Black bears are not necessarily huge, like people say that they saw this thing, but you know what? I mean, people get scared. They see something at night, they exaggerate the weight, or they say it was 700 to 1,000 pounds,
Right.
Or they just want people to pay attention to them, so they exaggerate everything about it. But, you know, I've seen bears hold things with their giant fucking claws that bears have, and they can cup things just like, you know, if you're driving by something and you see a bear cupping, you know, something on the side of the road. I don't know how else you can describe that other than they're holding it in their claws. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say they're holding it in their paws, but I mean, bears have big claws. Bears hold things, you know? I mean,
Sure.
I
think it's definitely rare for a bear to be in this area of southern Wisconsin. Rare, but not out of the question.
Yeah, I would say less rare than a werewolf.
I would am inclined to agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean,
so we can talk about, so there's actually, like, you know, there's other things too. There's clinical lycanthropy, which, you know, according to the DSM-5 is defined as a rare psychiatric syndrome that involves the delusion.
DSM-5? What's the DSM-5?
The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. So it is basically the holy grail of mental disorders as far as a written document. Are you familiar with it at all?
No, but I'm glad you told me what it was.
No, it is a very real and very widely used and accepted I don't even want to call it book, manuscript for diseases in mental health. So there's clinical lycanthropy. Basically people think that they are werewolves, you know, and are able to shape shift into wolves. And I think one of the defining characteristics.
Wait, whoa, slow down. Wait a minute. So you just said that according to a medical journal, there's something called so-and-so lycanthropy. Clinical lycanthropy, where people think that they're wolves. But then you just said really quickly and kept on going that people can shapeshift into wolves.
No, this affliction. The affliction is that they believe they can shapeshift into wolves. That's part of what clinical lycanthropy is. I'm not saying people are able to do it. I'm saying this is what's classified as the mental disorder by the DSM-5. So you also have other things like this is again now back into the human realm of things like hypertrichosis, which is a abundant growth of hair all over the body. I mean, there's pictures of it all over the internet. These are sideshow freaks from the early 1900s and late 1800s that are are littered through old pictures and goofy stuff like that. And I mean, we can talk about how it could be any one of those things, but I think when you come back to the reality, what you had discussed earlier, possible bear, possible coyote. I mean, wolves have been now reintroduced to the area. There's that statistic about how they released like 100 wolves or something like that, or how many wolves into like Wyoming, into the Yosemite National like Park, and it became like 10,000 wolves in a matter of 10 years. You know, like
they got to fucking.
Yeah, dude. They got to eating everything because there was literally no apex predator in the area. So I mean, there was nothing but an abundance of food sources and nothing for them to do but eat and kill these things. So they did reintroduce wolves back into the northern Wisconsin and Minnesota regions. I mean, it's not out of the question that these things could come back down. There are cougars in this area. People have seen cougars, mountain lions. They're all kind of the same thing in this area. If you haven't seen something, your brain kind of files it away, like when you finally see it, as something you've already seen. That's just literally that's how your eyes work and how your eyes process information to your brain. Like, that is fact. So you could finally see something and it's a fucking cougar or it's a wolf, and you're not used to ever seeing something like this. So again, it's the old fishing tale, like you were saying earlier. Like, if it was a foot, it was 10 feet tall. You know what I'm saying? So you have somebody who in the middle of the night sees this creature that jumps into the back of their truck bed, and all of a sudden it's 10 feet tall. It weighs 700 pounds. I think a lot of that is fear talking. You know, what's the likelihood? He drags a dead roadkill. This thing hasn't eaten in a long time, or this thing has been studying this piece of roadkill for itself. This guy walks out of the car, throws it back into this thing, sees an easy meal, and comes and picks this thing up. So I think that there's, again, a ton of reality to this in the sense of like what it could be that isn't a dogman. But again, at the end of the day, and I talked about it at the start of the episode, I like to just believe. You know, I have more fun believing in something than not believing in it. And if there's any credibility lent to the idea of religion or the way we kind of, you know, any kind of higher power belief, like I kind of view this in the same road. Like, I would never attack somebody on their religion unless they were coming after me about it. And this is just kind of my decision. Like, yeah, I've never seen this thing, but I choose to believe it because, again, for me, it's more fun than to not believe in it, you know? And shit, well, it makes up for an episode on the show. You know what I mean?
You choose to believe what? What are you believing?
I guess I believe that. All right, so I'll go back to this. I think what these people were seeing, especially on Bray Road and within the 1989 to 1993, when there was there were literally hundreds of reports of this thing in the area, not just on Bray Road, but in the area. And there were other strange coincidences and strange appearances and things that these people were seeing, and kind of all describing. This isn't the day of the internet, so you couldn't just go on here. You know, these people they weren't all in contact with each other. So I do believe a lot of people were seeing something. I think, personally, it was some kind of anomaly, like some kind of genetic mutation of a dog or a coyote of some kind that was either way bigger than it should have been and way bigger than they normally get, which I'm going to now say is probably more of like a wolf characteristic. I think it was way bigger than a normal animal. And when they saw this thing, and you have, again, people from the area, people from the countryside, people who are known to see these things. I live in a fairly suburban area. I've seen plenty of coyotes in my area. I know what they look like. But if I see one that is much bigger than a coyote is supposed to be, I think that's where it comes into like what this thing could be. You know, holy shit, that's not a coyote. I know what a coyote looks like. Same thing with these people are seeing. I know what a wolf looks like. I've seen a wolf. And they're saying that this thing isn't the wolf. This thing was much larger than it should have been. It got up on two legs and ran away, which, again, I mean, if you're talking anything on the evolutionary chain, like, it's not out of the question for something to get up on two legs and run away for a little bit. Like, I mean, bears do it all the time. They look a little clumsy and stupid when they're doing it, but again, it happens. And people see these things and then immediately are like, okay, it has to be this other thing. You know, I think there's so much to go on. But then once there's a wall that you kind of hit. I think there's a wall of information that you kind of get to. I think there's so much certainty in some of these explanations, and there's so much certainty in some of these sightings that's kind of what draws me away from dogman sightings. It has to be this. There's no way it could be anything else. Like, I know what I saw. Like, that's the frustration in any sighting for me.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I think that I don't even know if I believe the lady that said it clawed into the back of her car. I don't know what Linda Godfrey's deal is with not taking a picture of the trunk, saying that she saw claw marks and that blah 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 this blah that. The guy that was picking up roadkill off the side of the road, I believe that there was something that freaked him out, and that because he has seen so many animals, maybe he's, because he didn't recognize what he saw right away, he thinks that it has to be something, odd because he didn't recognize it right away, and he thinks of himself as an expert as far as Wisconsin fauna is concerned. But fact of the matter is, everyone describes pointy ears, bears and coyotes and German shepherds, which a lot of people, we didn't really talk about it, but a lot of people claim that this thing had like the head of a German shepherd.
Yeah, head of a dog, exactly. Head of a dog or wolf.
Yeah, they all have
muzzle.
pointy ears.
Sure.
Bears have claws. People say that these things have claws. A bear on the back of your truck that's climbing on your like little toolbox in the bed of your truck is going to look huge through your rear view mirror, or if you turn around, it's going to look huge. If you look at the head of a black bear, he said that the muzzle, it looked like pulled back and didn't have hair on it. So let's say a black bear is eating. Go look at a picture of a black bear. A black bear doesn't necessarily have black hair down its whole muzzle. A lot of the muzzle is a much lighter tone, so it wouldn't necessarily look like a bear if you were super close to it. And also, no one is ever very close to a bear in the wild unless you're screwed, So, I mean, the guy was scared. I just think that if he wasn't full of shit, which I'm inclined to believe that he was not full of shit, some kind of animal jumped on there and scared him, and he thought it was something else, Yeah. The beast of prey. Look, there's a lot of other stuff that we can talk about that is a lot more mysterious. Like there's stuff, I read about that Skinwalker Ranch, and there's a bunch of shit about that I think is just. I think there's a lot of weirdness there, but I also think that like a lot of the information coming out of it is just so unsubstantiated and so unsupported. And I just wish that the way that people decided to present these cases was a little bit more founded in a method than just spouting off what they feel about things. I think that it'd be much more powerful. And I think that if they had actually seen something that's like really odd, they would be doing themselves a huge service by trying to gather themselves a little bit by presenting this information. But we're not talking about like really out there things. We're not talking about, for example, like facilities that have had long histories of hauntings and stuff like that. This Beast of Bray Road is a quirky Wisconsin story. My opinion of it is that if people saw anything, it was a bear, it was a dog, it was a wolf or something like that. I don't believe for any second that there was anyone with clinical lycanthropy. I don't believe for any second that there was any kind of animal that isn't of completely natural Wisconsin origin. As far as the Beast of Bray Road is concerned, I think the Beast of Bray Road is very much a black bear or a coyote or something like that.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways I'm inclined to agree with you, especially about the way that this kind of information is presented. For a long time, for me, I mean, aliens and Bigfoot and Loch Ness and all of the things that kind of fits under that umbrella of paranormal has always been very real and close to me. But I think as I get older and I research this more or whatever you want to call it, read about it more, I agree with you. And I watched a really awesome documentary again on Amazon called The Unwanted Sasquatch. And in one of the clips from this guy, he says it perfectly. And I've said this forever now. And ever since I watched this, he says the biggest enemy to the Sasquatch community is the community itself. And I think that stays all the way through, whether it's Loch Ness, whether it's aliens, whether it's dogmen, whether it's Bigfoot. Like it's the community and the people that surround it that are its biggest enemies and the biggest outliers in why people don't want to take any of this seriously. And because of exactly what you said, they see this thing. There's no justifiable evidence that they saw this thing. There's no justifiable, I guess evidence. That's the best word I can come up with. There's nothing on the ground. There's nothing in context. There's nothing that they have that says this thing is, and these people come to you with this absolute, I know what I saw. But on the other hand, for me, I know what I saw. When I saw what I saw in the ditch driving down to Southern Illinois University, and I cannot describe it any further than the way I described it in the first episode. I have no idea what it was. I can tell you for certain what it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell you that in the 10 seconds that I observed this thing, which, doesn't sound like a lot of time, but that's plenty of time. I can tell you what it wasn't. But to come to say it's this thing, it was this way, it looked like this, it's like, come on. Like, give the people like you, Seth, like, give people like you a reason to believe your story. Okay. And that doesn't mean exaggerating or not exaggerating something. It means tell them the truth. Tell me the truth about what you saw. Don't blow this out of proportion. Don't tell me what you know it is, and don't tell me what you know about anything. Give people like you and like other people in the community who are so willing to dismiss and naysay these things, give them a reason to believe this. Don't just say things that are insane. Like, I cannot stress that enough to the community of people listening to us. I don't know what kind of fan base we're speaking to on this. I'm sure there's a ton of people who are going to get pissy about, your views on this, and then a ton of people are pissy about my views on this. But at the end of the day, this is kind of why we're doing this show. I just want people to really drop the bullshit and drop the airs that they're putting on and really come to us with what they think is the truth, and be very open-minded to the idea that, yeah, I don't know what I saw, but I'll tell you what I don't think it was, and I'll tell you what I think it is, not what I know it is, not what I know it wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, and I completely agree with that. Unfortunately, it seems like in a lot of cases, the people that have the capability to do that aren't the people that are seeing these things, and I think that there's a little bit of a correlation to that.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways you're right. But like I said, for me, at the end of the day, I believe a lot of these. I believe what Lori Andreezy thinks she saw. I believe what Donna Gibson thinks she saw. I think I might be saying her first name wrong, but I think these people are seeing something. I think they saw something. I think it was weird. I think it might have been something that we don't know, not necessarily exists as a species unto its own, but maybe that there's a few offshoots of something that already currently exists. So I think this current recording of the Beast of Bray Road has been my favorite so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think we're right at an hour here, so let's wrap it up.
Yeah. So thank you guys again very much for even taking any time to even figure out what the Decrypted podcast is all about. As you can tell, there's a wide varying of opinions from mine to Seth's. And again, I've known Seth for a long time, and I would have never asked anybody else to do something like this with me. I know where he was going to come from with this. And I think I think hearing kind of both sides of the argument, both sides of the story is more fun for you guys, because I don't want any one person to be like, I only believe and I won't listen to somebody who doesn't believe. I think that's unfair and kind of bizarre that you would you'd shut that kind of the argument out, especially considering there's no hard science or real science that has achieved any kind of proof of any of this really that's been going on. So
yeah, for sure. So we don't know when we're gonna record our next podcast. We think that we have the topic for it, as we touched on at the beginning of this episode. Hopefully within the next week we get that recorded, and that is definitely just about a baseball player who did some acid in the 70s and then threw a no-hitter. So it's not about monsters or cryptids or anything like that. It's going to be fun. If you want to check us out in the meantime, once we get this uploaded and you can listen to it and stuff, check us out on YouTube at Decrypted Podcast. If you're listening to this here, please like the video, subscribe. We very much appreciate it. We're trying to grow. We're going to try to improve every week. We're brand new at this, so bear with us a little bit.
Yeah, and you can follow us all at the Decrypted Cast on Twitter. I try to make sure I get a posting in every day. Just kind of say something. Interacting with us is always easy. It's on my phone. It's something you say something, I will happily answer back. You hate what we're listening to, let's talk about it. Like we're trying to make this better for everybody, and I really am excited for the next topic to kind of move away from the weirdness and talk about something a lot more concrete. And the more research I've done about Doc Ellis, the more excited I am to talk about it. So you're going to see a lot of things on this. This is not just cryptids. This is not just me trying to hammer something down your throat saying believe in it, and it's not just Seth saying there's no fucking way. We're going to talk about some real shit, more maybe some true crime shit too in the past or in the future. But I think what we've done here today is a good episode. I think what we have here is a good formula for a show, and I'm excited to continue going.
Yep, it's going to be fun. All right, Thanks everybody.
Thank you guys very much. Have a great night.
All right.